Now, the next step is applying what we learned here to our Tindog website. And we need to make this section a 6-unit column so that it takes up half of the screen, and this image to be another 6-unit column so it takes up the right side 50% of the screen. But when it goes on to a smaller size, say tablet or mobile, we want it to take up 100% of the width so that we can see the image and the text and the buttons more easily. So let's go ahead and do that now. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I want to add a background color to our first section, just so that we can see it more easily and visually divide it from the rest of the content so that we know exactly what we're working on. So in order to do that, you can see that we've got a number of these sections inside our body, right? And the first section includes the navigation bar as well as the title section. And this section has an ID called title. So let's go ahead into our styles.css and target that title section. And I want you to see if you remember what the selector was in order to change the background color of that title section. And the background color is going to be the hashtag or the pound sign, and then followed by FF4C68. So see if you can change the background color of this title section by using the right selector. So pause the video and give that a go. What you should remember from our CSS section is that in order to target the HTML elements, we simply add in the name of the element. So for example, body. Now, in order to target classes, we simply add dot in front of the class name. But in order to target IDs, as we've got over here, we need to use the pound sign or the hashtag sign. So we have to say hashtag title, which is the name of that ID. And then we can start specifying our background color property. And we're going to change it to pound sign FF4C68. And let's check to make sure if that worked. Brilliant. So that first section now has this kind of reddish color, which means that it's working exactly as we want it to. Now, I want this navigation bar to not have its own color. I want it to just be a light colored navigation bar. So we can go ahead and remove the Bootstrap class that gives this background a dark color, which is of course the background-dark class. So now let's hit save and refresh, and you can see that our nav bar now looks like it's a part of that first header title section. Now here comes a challenge. I want you to use what you learned just now about the Bootstrap grid system to make the title and the download buttons take up 50% of the width on the left, and the image of the phone take up 50% of the width on the right, and this is on the large desktop size. When we get to the tablet sized, then they should each take up 100% of the width of the screen, and the same for the mobile sized. So pause the video and see if you can complete this challenge. All right, so how did that go? Well, the first thing that we need in order to use the Bootstrap grid system is to have that div that encloses the entire row that we're going to use the grid system on. So we've got this div here already, which includes the heading, the buttons, as well as the images. So we can simply give that one a class of row. Now, the next thing that we need is to separate the other parts of the content into two separate divs. So that means that our H1 and buttons will have a div and the image will have a div. So let's create a div here and put our heading and button inside. And now we should have two divs that are going to help us separate out the content using the grids. So the first one, we're going to give a class of column-large-6, which means that on any size, that's the large size, which means the laptop size, or bigger, so laptop or desktop, then we're going to have a 6-unit column that's going to contain this content. But any size smaller than that, will take up 100% of the width of the screen. So that's tablet and mobile. So we're going to do the same thing over here to the div that contains the image. So it's also going to take up 50% on the large sizes and 100% on the smaller sizes. So let's hit save, and once you refresh your page, you should have something that looks like this. Now, remember from our previous code that you don't have to specify the medium 12 unit or the small 12 unit because it's by default 100%. And you should read this code as on any screen size that's on the large size or bigger, so laptop or bigger, it should be a 6-unit column. And anything smaller than that will take up the full width of the row. And now we have this responsive title section where we're using the screen real estate with the maximum efficiency. So the last thing that I want to do before we finish off this lesson is I want to add some text styling, namely to change our fonts here. So I want you to go over to the Google Fonts and to embed the Ubuntu and the Montserrat typefaces into our website. So pause the video and do that now. All right, so you've done this before, so it shouldn't be too difficult. So we're just going to go to fonts.google.com and we're going to search for those two fonts that I mentioned. So one is the Ubuntu font, which we're going to use for our logo. And the other one is the Montserrat font, which we're going to use for the majority of the body of our website. So now we've got our two families selected. Load time is still relatively fast, so we can just copy that link and head back over to our index.html and add it into our header section. So now let's hit save, and we're going to use some of those font families. So the thing that I want to change the most is the style of the H1 because it's going to determine the size of it, and that will affect our layout. So I want to do that as early as possible. So I want you to change the font of this heading to a Montserrat -black. And I want the font size to be 3 rem and the line height to be 1.5 so that we get a little bit of space between it and anything else around it. So pause the video and try to complete this challenge. All right, so the first thing we need to do in order to change this text is figure out what is the element that we need to target. So the easiest thing here is we've already got an H1 and we only have one H1 on the whole page. So maybe we can just target the H1. So let's go ahead and target the H1. And then we're going to change its font family to Montserrat Black. So if you want to see what these fonts look like, you can always click on the font and scroll down to the different styles, and you can see what those different styles may look like. So if you wrote Montserrat-thin, for example, then our text is going to look exactly like the style specified here. But in our case, we want Montserrat Black, which is the heaviest weight that this typeface has. And the other thing we wanted to change was the font size. We wanted it to be 3 rem, so massive. And then we wanted to change the line height to 1.5. Remember, line height, you don't usually specify a unit because it's 2 times or 1 times, and you don't actually need to add pixels or rems or anything like that. So now let's hit save and let's look at our updated style of our title. And that's looking pretty nice. So in this lesson, we've learned about grids and how to use it to make our website responsive so that it uses the available screen real estate to the max. Now, in the next lesson, we're going to learn about another Bootstrap layout element called the container. So for all of that and more, I'll see you on the next lesson.